All right, Mr. Chair, we can just run through the agenda very quickly. This won't take long at all.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Tonight, item number one, DRH 25-00121 at 1504 West Lemp Street. We will hear that one. Item number two, DRH 25-00149 1610 North 12th for an accessory dwelling unit. We are recommending that for approval on consent.
Is anyone going to have any questions on item number two? Just great. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Easy enough. With that, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, we can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There's a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand either virtually or in person. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Josh. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago by staff, with staff, the applicant, the neighborhood association, and then public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Montoto. Malloy. Otter.
Here.
Parks.
Here.
Owens.
Here.
Sales.
Here.
Moore.
Present.
5 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. First up on our agenda tonight is minutes acceptance. We have our historic preservation work session and commission meeting minutes from May the 19th, 2025. Do I have any comments, corrections, or a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes, work session minutes and commission minutes from the May 19th, 2025.
Thank you,
session.
Commissioner Otter.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Owens. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Abstain.
Parks.
Aye.
Owens.
Aye.
Sales.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our potential consent agenda, we have had one item proposed for placement on tonight's consent agenda. That is DRH 25-00149 at 1610 North 12th Street. Is the applicant present? Great, thank you. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Great, thank you for confirming that. Is there anyone present wishing to testify in opposition to this application? And I don't have anyone on the sign-up sheet for that one. So I propose that we place item number 2 on the consent agenda. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve said consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda with item DRH 25-00149.
Thank you, Commissioner Otter. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Otter,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Owens,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our item of new business, DRH 25-00121 at 1504 West Lemp Street. Richard, could we have the report?
You can. This is the aerial map indicating where the property is located on the northwest corner of 15th and Lemp Street, directly to the north of Washington Elementary School. This is the existing site plan showing the existing residence and the proposed neighborhood cafe outlined in a dashed line to the east of the residence. Here is the proposed site plan showing the existing residence and the proposed neighborhood cafe with landscape and outdoor seating areas delineated. And here's the proposed landscape plan showing the landscape and hardscape in greater detail. This is the floor plan of the neighborhood cafe. And these are the elevations showing the storefront system, including the area where the glazing extends to the overhang to the right of the south entrance to the top right elevation you're seeing. And the board form concrete outdoor fireplace and chimney to the left of the same entrance, as well as the vertical fiber cement siding, primarily the gray lines to the west on the elevation to the top left and top right. These are the perspective drawings. And the applicant's basis for the design that associates the use of chimneys in general to having the ones shown in the proposal and the context for the angular storefront being pulled from a commercial building on Hayes Street. This is the key for the photos provided in case we need to reference them throughout the deliberation. These are the photographs of the primary residence, alley, and neighboring properties. Please note, there's no parking provided. However, the applicant has previously received a variance and other permits do not require off-street parking. Therefore, parking should not be a consideration of the commission's decision. In analyzing the proposal, considering the city's guidelines, staff determined that the applicant is basing the contemporary storefront and clear story windows on a non-contributing structure in a different historic district, that being Hayes Street, which is approximately 0.6 miles or 9 blocks away. The guidelines state that it is appropriate to borrow from diversity in architectural styles in the district. However, the basis property is outside the district and is a non-contributing and non-historic structure, I believe built in the 80s or 90s. I'd have to verify. The proposed storefront and clear story described above, as well as the other windows, do not meet the guidelines, as it is inappropriate to erect a new building which does not maintain the proportions or patterns of windows similar to those in the district. Nor should one provide windows of overall proportions that are greatly different from windows on buildings on adjacent sites. Finally, being all fixed glass aluminum storefront windows, they are incongruous with the character of the district. The proposed structure has an exterior fireplace and chimney constructed out of board form concrete. The concrete was traditionally used as a material for stoop, steps, etc. in the district. This heavily textured finish is a recent technique which was not used historically, as concrete was traditionally finished smooth. The applicant is also proposing vertical fiber cement siding. Siding was traditionally horizontal in the historic district. Therefore, the applicant is not meeting this guideline. In analyzing this proposal, considering the Secretary of the Interior standards, staff has determined that Standard 9 states that the new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be congruous with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. As demonstrated by the above analysis, this proposed neighborhood cafe is not utilizing congruous architectural features. Therefore, staff recommends denial, and I will stand for any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Richard. The questions for staff from the commission. Great. Hearing none, we'll now hear from the applicant.
So Brandon is on the phone and he was going to call in to kick it off. So I don't know how we go about unmuting or allowing him.
Brandon, one moment. I will promote you to a panelist.
Thank you for the promotion. How's the looking? Everybody here is okay?
Yes, please state your name and address.
Awesome. This is Brandon Turpin and Christina Turpin of 1504 West Limp Street, Boise, Idaho 83702. We are the applicants for this project. Appreciate you having us today, Richard. Thank you for the feedback. We're excited to discuss our Cafe and Market project at 15th and Limp Streets with you this evening. We've lived on this property for nearly 12 years now, and this is an idea we've been working through with a desire to foster more walkability and vibrancy in the neighborhood and to continue the neighborhood's tradition of community and offer a place to gather with our families. We've taken many steps to protect the neighborhood's historic character and street frontage and continue to align the project with the surrounding historic area. Throughout this process, we've met with a lot of groups, neighbors, individually, informal settings with Nina P&Z, individual meetings with neighbors, and incorporated all of their feedback into the design and into the project as we work through it with our design team. We're excited to be a part of it, excited for the positive impact it'll have on our community and neighborhood. Rob Busen with Hummel Architects is also joined tonight, and he'll present further on the design and some specifics that Richard mentioned, and we'll be online to continue to address any questions you have for us. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Turpin.
And then I'm Rob Busan with Hummel Architects, 3608 West Burke Avenue, Boise, Idaho 83703. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you and discuss this project today. As Brandon noted, this has been sort of a long time coming. Very much looking forward to it myself. The design process with Brandon and some of the neighbors have been very collaborative. As you can imagine, there's Brandon and Christina have it right next door to them. They're the primary neighbor on the parcel, so they've been very interested and collaborative in the process. In the submittal packet, we worked to show how we've designed the building to fit within its context, but also represent its own time and differentiate the new building from the old. The staff report highlighted a few sticking points that I would like to discuss further, working from sort of a larger scale down to materiality and smaller scale stuff. So in the report, it cites that this building and development is outside of in misalignment with Boise's comprehensive plan, which is actually just out of line with the previous decision made by the CUP and the Planning and Zoning Commission. That staff report says the comprehensive plan states that this neighborhood activity center is intended to support small scale mixed use development, and that this small neighborhood serving commercial use is located within a walkable residential neighborhood and is near a neighborhood activity center, which is supported by the comprehensive plan. With its location just across from Washington Elementary and just blocks away from Hyde Park, there's a unique opportunity to create a walkable neighborhood amenity in this location. Looking at the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Historic Treatment of Historic Structures, particularly guideline number 9, it states the new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features. In these diagrams and in the packet, we've illustrated how we've done that. We've matched the neighborhood with, from a scale perspective and a materiality perspective. And also worth noting, as we look at the residential guidelines, this is in fact a commercial project within a residential neighborhood that is allowed per the new Boise zoning code. As stated in the guidelines, the character and vitality of the North End districts is in its diversity, its architectural styles, size of buildings, and parcels and mix of land uses. And then focusing in a little bit on the, call that as the contemporary storefront, which I took to mean this sort of gabled end that was cited as being inspired by that project on Hayes Street. That was simply just a reference point. And understanding that's outside of the district, I've started to look a little bit closer. So this first image is off of, I think it's on 15th Street, but directly from the guidelines. And so with this, we're looking at similar materials, roof forms, and solid to void relationships as outlined in that 2.4.2 and how we've done so. So with these top three projects, the first project, the project on 15th, I believe, from the guidelines, there's sort of a split of the building and the gable in there from the point down where you have openness towards the entrance in this case, and then very solid on the opposing side. Looking at Brandon and Christina's residence, which is right next door to the cafe, we see a similar strategy there where you've got kind of a solid and a void relationship, sort of towing that 50-50 line. And then on the right, looking at the proposed cafe, or at least a single portion of the proposed cafe, and how we're doing something similar there. One of the main differences is that the windowsill goes up and matches the eave or the gable point. Understanding that's not happening in either one of these other ones. So looking just a 1/10 of a mile away to a project on Harrison, I do understand that Harrison is in a different district, but it's very close proximity seems appropriate. Also, the fact that Harrison, I think, is a very defining element of the North End itself. And then additionally, the dentist or orthodontics office that's over off Hayes Street, just for reference. Continuing on, looking at the other areas of storefront and how we've borrowed from other styles in the district and pursued similar solid to void relationships. So on the top here, we've got, again, the Turpin's house, and then looking at how we've sort of echoed or have similar spacing and orientation along the east facade of the proposed project. And on the south, I believe this home is 2 down along 15th Street, and looking at how the window layout echoes a similar pattern and can be found on a number of other homes in the district as well. There was also a comment about the clear story window, which is on the north facade of this project, non-street facing on the north. And the sill of that window was pulled up to provide and maintain privacy to the neighbors in that direction, while still allowing for daylighting and balanced daylighting into that space. As an example, we can look across the street from the proposed project site, Washington Elementary, where they have 3 sides of clear story windows wrapping what I assume is a gym space, showing similar characteristics there. There was also a comment calling out the fact that this is not an elevated entrance or does not have an elevated entrance or steps up to it. Being a commercial project, that's not super appropriate due to accessibility issues. Another example of that, again, looking across the street at Washington Elementary, probably to alleviate similar concerns and issues, they have an at-grade entrance. I also kind of question the fact whether perpetuating inaccessibility is a good move for a guideline, but that's probably a separate discussion. So since we have not elevated this building and have sort of the steps in the entry sequence, we've done so in other ways. We've got a defined entrance with large open glazing, which connects visually to the interior of the building, right towards the checkout counter or the point of sale. And then also have a canopy defining that. That's flanked by openings on either side. And then the walkway to the building, to the front door, is lined with plantings and a fence and bike parking areas to clearly define that upon approach from 15th Street. There was also discussion about the concrete on the building, the forming technique, I suppose. And so I've included a couple examples of concrete in a similar context and on the streets or neighboring streets. I do believe the really nice green home, the first one there actually has board form on the stoop itself. So an example of that in the neighborhood, right down the road, in fact. I would also question whether we're looking at doing a true board form technique. And I would also sort of question whether or not true board form reflecting craftsmanship and honesty and materiality is any less appropriate than a brick veneer system or a stucco or some sort of a skim coat over concrete to smooth it out. And then also looking or discussing the vertically oriented siding. We do have a combination of vertical and horizontal siding on the building project, or on the proposed project rather. So I've included a couple examples showing vertically oriented and a combination of vertical and other. This first one on 13th Street has vertically oriented siding, and then it's sort of angular on the other facades. The next one over has vertically oriented siding. And then this one on Heron Street, just down the road from the proposed project site, has a combination of both. Sort of already talked a little bit about the windows and how we've pulled from other elements in the context or the context around us for comparison. But diving further, so in there explicitly it's cited this in 5.8, this figure of what not to do. So I've included that in here, and I think I don't think that's what we're doing. The center being the standout, obviously. And then so down on the bottom, I've pulled a sort of a comparison. The bottom images here being the proposed cafe, and then above sort of an image that didn't necessarily pull inspiration from, but correlates with the design moves that we've made. Each of those we've already talked about. But and then here talking about the overall proportions of the windows. I think we're meeting it from a residential scale, but this, as noted, is a commercial project. The school is not a commercial project, but it's also not a residential. So if we need to look across the street at an example around the neighborhood, there's much different proportions of this structure than found in the residential areas. So thank you for your time today. I will, I guess I'll sit down and I can come back up for any questions after Nina has spoke, or I can stand here.
Are there any other presenters as a part of the presentation team? Great. Before you step away, are there any immediate questions for the applicant from the commission? Hearing none. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I will now hear from the Neighborhood Association.
Hi, Sandra Herman, 1404 North 7th Street. Mr. Chair, when we met with the architect and owner last summer, I was struck by how well the project's massing and form matched the existing homes on the block, which was not the case with the proposed coffee shop development next to Camel's Back Park. This was very pleasing to me, as I used to live just one block north on 15th, and I'm very familiar with the Snow Alley block. As one of the first commercial projects in the neighborhood proposed under the new zoning code rules, we hope to get clear standards and guidelines set for this kind of project moving forward. Guideline 9 is highly subjective, and since we are not trained architects or historians, we will leave the style interpretations to the commission. However, we have seen many of the elements called out in the report in new builds and commercial additions throughout the neighborhood, including vertical siding on modern farmhouse style new build residences and similar large windows in the Lost Grove Brewing addition. One of the unique assets to this business that is different from other coffee shops in the neighborhood is the extensive outdoor space and seamless indoor-outdoor feel. We think it's a little silly to ask for it to adhere to a step-up foundation. Most of the historic commercial buildings in the North End are at grade. This is a brand new commercial building, and we think an at-grade entrance differentiates it from the residences in a useful way. We don't need to mimic a past that excluded people and then artificially muddy up a landscape to make it ADA compliant. Traffic is not the purview of the commission, but it's important to point out that parking and traffic are the largest concern for neighbors. The city hopes to have that having commercial businesses nestled in the residential areas will help eliminate car trips overall, but this isn't tested yet. We hope that This business will bring more foot and bike traffic into the area and subconsciously slow down drivers. At both the neighborhood meeting and a private meeting with Nina last summer, we asked the owners to communicate well with neighbors and help their customers learn that to park considerately, especially allowing space near crosswalks and alleys. This is particularly important given Washington Elementary just across the street. This kind of project will mark a big change in the neighborhood, and we want to encourage calm, considerate, and thoughtful conversations between residential and commercial neighbors. Change remains hard, but not impossible to navigate with good communication. There's a lot of hardscape on this project, and we have encouraged the owners and the architect to use permeable paving whenever possible. Nina would like to remind business owners and contractors that materials listed within the accepted plans are part of an agreed upon contract with the city. It is important to adhere to the materials as listed, as they are part of standards in the historic district. Changing materials without consulting the city could result in fines, delays, and mitigation at the contractor or business owner's expense. We further want to remind contractors to adhere to all regulations regarding worksite requirements put forth by the city. Rules about work hours, noise, parking, and worksite neatness help keep our neighborhood neighborly. We recommend business owners communicate with neighbors before particularly disruptive parts of the construction process. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions for Nina?
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Moving to my sign-up sheet, the first person signed up to speak on this project is Carol Carden. Please step forward, state your name and address. Yes, please, and speak into the microphone.
Carol Carden. I live at 1714 North 15th Street. I'm kitty corner from the project. First, I want to say I want to support my neighbors, understand the need for commercial, get it. I walk all over that neighborhood and I love the walkability of the neighborhood and to go get a good cup of coffee. First, the comment that Nina made about we hope people will drive better and be conscientious around driving. I live on 15th Street. I would welcome that too. I doubt adding more commercial and that particular corner is the right answer. And I know that that's not the purview of this group. When I look at that building and the drawing of it, to me, it looks like something that belongs up around Crane Creek or around Harris Ranch, not kitty corner from a bunch of little cottages living in the north end. So there, just want to say, want to be supportive, don't like it.
Great, thank you. Next, I have Lars Lundberg. Oh, here we come. Hi, please state your name and address.
Lars Lundberg, 1612 North 16th. We live just right around the corner, a few houses from the project, and share the same alley. And I want to thank you for the important work you guys do. We went through the process with you guys a few years ago when we did a big change to our lot, and appreciate what you bring to the table through this process. I think the design looks great. I'm hopeful that minor issues don't prevent the project. Right, as far as the alignment, rhythm, spacing section versus the ADA accessibility, it seems like a minor issue. Same with the call out for the 9 blocks away. That seems like a minor issue to me as far as trying to distinguish that comparison. And the window issue, I mean, again, a minor issue. It reminds me a lot of Washington Elementary, where it's the historic part of the school, and then the new add-on has giant, large windows that don't look at all like the original school. Not a problem, I don't think. Right, the school looks great, and with this being a commercial building right next to the school, I think it shouldn't be an issue with the project. We're excited for it to be a gathering place, aligns with the new zoning code. Again, appreciate the large windows because it's a full view of the playground. And we're often over there with my son and my daughter who's 4, a bunch of the parents watching our kids play. And it'd be nice to go grab a cup of coffee and still have a full view of the playground. As far as I saw the Kinkeeds wrote in again, they had some comments at the planning and zoning on the parking. I've never met them. I don't think they've ever lived in that house. They may be preparing to live in it now, but we've lived in our house just around the corner for coming up on 9 years. Spend a lot of time in the neighborhood walking through the intersections, taking them to daycare, and no concerns on traffic or safety, especially since the Turpins have kids same age as ours. You know, they're looking out for the best interest of their kids. So just want to, share my thoughts on that. And again, thanks for your work on this. And I think the Turpins are trying to do a great thing to improve the neighborhood and shouldn't make it harder on them to do that. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. That's all I have on my sign-up sheet. Is there anyone else present wishing to testify for or against this project? Is there anyone online? Okay, very good. I invite the applicant to come back up for rebuttal. You have, I believe, put my glasses on, 5 minutes, I believe. Should you wish, I mean.
Thank you. Certainly won't need more than a second, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today on behalf of this project. I have no doubt that it'll become a valued asset to its community. I look forward to any discussion and I'm around for any questions if needed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission before we close the public hearing? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing and open the floor to the commission for discussion and or motion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Owens.
I think I could kick off discussion on this one. So I think I agree that I'm fully in support of this project. I think there are probably a couple of compromises that could be made in the materials to make it a little bit more aligned with the neighborhood, because we do want it to look conducive to it being in a historic district. This is an extremely modern design and building, even though it's pulling some elements from the surrounding area. I think with some edits to some of the materials, including maybe a change to the concrete chimney being a different material, and then possibly, and I take less issue with this, changing that vertical siding to a horizontal lap siding. I think I'd be much more supportive of it in that case. I did notice that it has uplighting. I think that's something we generally try to avoid. So that might be another edit that we could possibly make to this project. Those are my initial thoughts on it. I don't take any issue with I think the accessibility is probably an improvement. And I know that it's being reviewed with residential guidelines because it's in a residential historic district and it's a commercial building. So it makes it a lot harder for it to comply with those residential guidelines. But I'm fully in support of having this type of local commercial walkable development in these residential neighborhoods and in a residential historic district. I think just requires some flexibility on our side.
It is a bit of a conundrum trying to, with our new zoning code, how to deal with the commercial projects within the residential and following residential guidelines. It does make a difficult moment for the commission for sure. I would just say I find it commendable, the level of, when you look at the scale, form, the height, the proportion, the massing, all the, it's checking off so many great boxes. I had concerns about the board formed concrete and the vertically oriented siding. The board formed concrete is, it is, as the applicant pointed out, more of a craftsman approach. It's something that we find here in Idaho at, for instance, at the Sun Valley Lodge. It is something of that time period, but I also understand it's not prevalent in the neighborhood association. But I was curious to hear the commission's thoughts and comments on that element. The vertical siding, there is some precedence. It's a little bit weak, but it is still the right materiality, and it is still present in the neighborhood association to that degree. To the notion of the windows on the project, I've felt that the applicant had some very good examples of that solid negative formation at the front facing facade of buildings that I thought was a sophisticated way to take what does appear very modern and very much of this age, but still very applicable to the overall form and massing in the neighborhood. So.
Mr. Chair, I largely agree with everything that you just said. I think that as the applicant pointed out, the compatible or comparable massing scale and size fits very well. If I had to kind of stack rank I don't want to call them concerns, but my call outs, similar to Commissioner Owens, I would say the replacing some of the concrete on the ground with permeable ground materials would probably be the first one, and then I go back and forth on the concrete chimney, and I'm not concerned at all about the vertical siding.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Further thoughts, comments? Motion.
Mr. Chair. I think I'll just follow up and say, I think that if we could make some minor changes to it, I think we've heard mentioned a few times that board form concrete is maybe not the most appropriate material, even though it could be an appropriate material. I think it's not the most appropriate material for the project. So I'd probably recommend going with a material we see more often in the district. So that might be like a natural rock or brick, whatever looks more appropriate and the applicant is interested in using. They could discuss that with staff conceivably to find a material that's more appropriate and that fits with their design. And then I think the other piece that we just need to nail down is whether or not we think that the vertical siding is appropriate as compared to a horizontal lap siding, which I do think more often we see the horizontal lap siding, but I wouldn't want to tank this project over which direction the new siding goes. So I think that one's definitely up for debate, and I wouldn't, deny it if we stuck with the vertical siding on that one. I also have no issue with the picture windows, and I think the permeable pavers would be great for this project, especially because it does have maybe more impermeable surfaces compared to like a residential project in the same area.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I guess I
Commissioner
will
Otter.
follow on my comments to Commissioner Owens. I'm also concerned about the fireplace and think that if we could come up with another material that would work for me. I do have concerns about the vertical siding. I feel like we are opening Pandora's box with it, and maybe asking it to go horizontal kind of reduces that. I'm concerned about, we now have all these commercial buildings that can come into the district, and what are our standards and how are we going to hold people to them? And if we're holding residential houses primarily to the horizontal siding, I think we should also be holding the commercial buildings to that. I don't have any problems with not having a step up. I think that from a compliance perspective for ADA, it just makes sense to be ground level. And so from that perspective, I'm not concerned. But those are my two comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Otter.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to weigh in as team board formed concrete. It is pretty, that's how they did it back in the day. Every house I've worked on in the last 10 years built before 1950 has a board form foundation, sometimes covered with stucco. It's usually not a very good idea because it doesn't hold up. But I do agree that the chimney is pretty dominant and more in line with the contemporary style, which people have commented on. So maybe there's some compromise there, but I would gladly have the board form concrete over the continuous vertical siding, which is not really that congruous. Typically, it was just done on the gables for historic houses. I think that that's something that should be considered. Is I do agree with more of the horizontal lap siding to be a little more congruous. That's it.
Mr. Chair, could I get any other commissioners' thoughts on the uplighting and whether or not that would be appropriate for this structure?
Let me look momentarily at where that's being considered. Yeah. Generally not advisable. Again, commercial project in a residential zone, but we definitely still want to be good neighbors. We also want to be safe. Are you envisioning perhaps other alternatives for the lighting?
Mr. Chair, yeah, that's correct. I was just thinking maybe some down lighting, some baffled lighting, more directed lighting. I don't love to see up lighting on any project. Just given that, Ada County does prefer the dark skies, so.
Strong thoughts, opinions?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think I'm ready to make a motion.
Very good. Thank you.
So I would move to approve project DRH 25-00121 with the conditions that the fireplace material be replaced with a more appropriate material that can be determined by staff, that the vertical siding be changed to a horizontal lap siding, and that the uplighting is replaced with a lighting that includes either some baffling or some down shielding or is otherwise removed.
Do you want to include anything about permeable paving in your motion?
Yes, I will add on to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, that the paving have some level of permeability on the site. I don't necessarily want to set an exact amount that they need to have permeable, but that they include some permeable, either pavement or material for the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Owens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Otter. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Otter,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Owens,
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.